The difference between Kevin Warsh and Pam Bondi or Todd Blanche is that he has to convince 11 other people to go along with him. And right now, the feeling at the Fed is not to cut interest rates. It's maybe to move to a place where they could go either way here. So it's not a unilateral thing. Kevin is a persuasive guy. The chair of the Fed is a powerful position, but he has to bring 11 other people along with him.
Miles, have you seen Trump in a moment like this before, having worked for him in the first term?
Well, we tried to prevent a lot of moments like this, Nicole. I mean, I don't say that facetiously. I mean, there were wars, conflicts, international crises he wanted to foment, like this, including in the first term. He was considering going to war with Iran. He kept a number of us out of the room, as I was told by the White House Chief of Staff's office, because we were naysayers, because we were people who were trying to convince him not to. Now, he didn't, but he's there. I've never seen him this unraveled, Nicole. He almost always, even in a losing situation, tries to find some way to put Donald Trump lipstick on a pig and say, well, look, I won, even when he didn't win. The fact that he is still considering military options is the biggest admission you've gotten from this White House, that they know they are not winning, that they have put the United States in a losing position. Unfortunately, almost none of those options you read off, citing Axios reporting, would put the United States ultimately in a winning position. Remember, Nicole, we were told that the nuclear program was going to be decimated. It was implied that the entire Iranian regime would be changed. It was said that Iran wouldn't be able to attack its adversaries in the region. It wouldn't be able to fund its proxies, and the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened, and its capabilities militarily would be decimated. None of those have been achieved. Those have not been achieved. And in almost every scenario, it looks like the United States will end up worse off vis-a-vis Iran than it was before. And so I'm not surprised to hear that Donald Trump wants to drop more bombs and create spectacle so he can say that something changed since very obvious failed negotiations.
I mean, and let's not skip over what the options are. One involves a mission that, based on, as you said, the Axios reporting, involves sending special forces in to what? To dismantle, destroy, steal the enriched uranium? I mean, that sounds like a riskier military operation than anything that's been contemplated to date. The other is to take over part of the Strait of Hormuz. There's a blockade of a blockade of a blockade that doesn't seem to be going very well. So that's an escalation of something we're not exactly crushing. And the other is to bomb their infrastructure, which goes very close to the line that Donald Trump telegraphed he wanted to cross and invited outcry from across the ideological political spectrum. Are you clear on this 60th day of the war what the objective is?
No, not at all. And I'm going to tell you, if I was in the Situation Room, Nicole, I would be having this conversation with the president on that first option about going to try to get the fissile material. Look, it seems very compelling. I'm chief among people who want to see Iran without a nuclear program, but that is an operation so risky, it belongs in special forces video games and not reality. I mean, if it could be pulled off without casualties,